I need those woos because I have a very husky voice. I don't know if anyone else somehow found themselves at the karaoke last night. I did. Bad decision. But I'm here, and so the woos are really helpful, so thank you. Cool, yeah, so I'm Lucy. I didn't teach astrophysics or shooting people into space, actually. I taught politics. Astrophysics would have been really fun. But yeah, so that was 12 years ago, and since then I've done a lot of things, but now I've been working at Teach for All for the last 6 years. So in the talk, I'm going to talk a little bit at the start about what Teach for All is. Then we're going to share 10 lessons, not 5 lessons, 10, about what we're learning about building global communities. And then there'll be time at the end. If anyone's got any questions, I'd be more than happy to take them. My colleague Pixie was supposed to be doing this session with me. We were going to tag team, but unfortunately, she's not been able to make it in person. But she is here virtually, so if anyone wants to chat with Pixie, she's on the chat and really, really keen to connect with people. Okay, so before we share our lessons, what is Teach for All? I'll give a really brief overview. Essentially, we are a global network of 60 independent organizations that work in 60 countries. You can see where they are on this map. This network is growing. About every year, 5 new organizations join the network, so it's a growing global network. Oh, I don't know, my slides are a bit weirdly formatted. Anyway, so what do these organizations do? They have a common belief, which is that they believe every kid, every child deserves an incredible education. But they recognize that all around the world, that's just not the case for so many children. And that there are this problem of educational inequity is just so huge, it's systemic. There are so many contributing factors, there are so many layers. Like, here are just a few things that are contributing to this problem. You know, kids not having amazing early childhood education, kids not having the health and nutrition that they need, families being unable to engage in education. There is just so much going on with this problem. It is going to require many, many solutions. So what do these organizations, these 60 organizations do, is they believe that lots of solutions are needed, but at the heart of every single solution is a leader, is someone who's generating that solution and working collectively with lots of other people to bring about that change. So each of these organizations is developing the leaders that we need to solve this problem. And this is how they do it. So I'm going to give the example of our partner Teach for India, who are in India. You may have heard of Teach for America, which is our US partner. There's Teach for Australia, Teach for Austria, Teach for Afghanistan, Teach for Bangladesh. The list goes on. What do? Each individual organization partners with local schools and geographic communities in their country who share their vision that every child deserves an amazing education. They then recruit their country's most promising future leaders who commit to teaching for 2 years, and during those 2 years take part in a really fantastic leadership development program. So they train the teachers and develop their leadership. That's a formative experience. After the 2 years, where we really believe the magic's going to happen is what these people, these alumni, go on to do next. We want a large number of them to stay in school, to continue being incredible classroom teachers. But we know the systemic problem is so huge that we actually need leaders to go into policy making. We need them to be social entrepreneurs. We need them to be ed tech entrepreneurs. We need them to be school principals. We need them everywhere in the system. So we do want some of them to leave the classroom and go and have an impact in other areas of the system. So that's what those organizations are doing. Teach for All, the organization I work for, the global organization, what we're doing is we are trying to connect those teachers, those school principals, those ed tech entrepreneurs in our network to each other across borders. Because we believe that what they're doing locally is incredible, but if they can be globally informed and exposed to what's possible in other countries, the innovations that people are doing in different parts of the world, they'll be more impactful in the work that they're doing locally. So we're building global communities of these teachers and alumni so they can learn from each other and be exposed to new ideas and new innovations. And I'm going to tell you about that. And the whole theory of this is that if this happens all around the world, then hopefully children will be able to thrive. So that's the kind of summary of what we're doing at Teach for All. 60 plus strong independent organizations recruiting and training leaders. A global organization, the one that I work for, connecting them so they can learn from each other equals a thriving network. To give you a sense of the scope, at the moment we have 15,000 people doing that 2-year program somewhere in those 60 countries. We have 88,000 people who have completed the program. I'm one of them. I did it in the UK 12 years ago. And at the global level, Teach for All level, we're building these global communities of these folks, and there are just over 30 of them right now. Here's an example of some of these global communities. So, some of these alumni go on to be social entrepreneurs. Some go on to work in education policy, ed tech, lots of teachers interested in girls' education, mental health and well-being. These are all the topics and interests areas that people are coming together globally to learn from each other. Once a year, we ask folks, what is being connected globally enabling you to do? And these are the kind of things that people tell us, when this is a 10-point scale. People telling us that they're being super inspired and going back into their local work feeling more motivated. People telling us they've grown in their leadership skills. People telling us they're changing roles, they're adapting innovations from that country and contextualizing it into their own context. So this is kind of how we're measuring the impact of these communities, these global communities. Okay, that was a lot. 10 lessons. What are we learning from doing this stuff? And I just want to caveat, we're constantly learning, and I'm not here to say, this is how you do it. It's just here are some things that we've learned along the way. We've been doing it for about 4 or 5 years now. So lesson 1 is make the purpose of the global community super clear. I think when we started, maybe we weren't very clear about why you should come and be part of this global school principal community of practice or this ed tech entrepreneur community of practice. This is not a way to make friends. It's not a way so that you can travel to go and meet other people in other countries. It's not a way for you to reminisce about the program. Those things might happen in this community, but it's not the goal of the community. The purpose of this community is so that you are better and more impactful in your local work from being inspired by colleagues from different parts of the world. That's the purpose. And so just getting really clear on that is so, so important. Lesson number 2 is how important it is to recruit the members of these global communities really, really carefully. We found that when we were like, hey, if anyone wants to come and be involved in the STEM global community or the EdTech entrepreneurs global community, you got a lot of people who were just kind of interested in that topic, but weren't really there to commit to learning. And so when we focused down the membership and curated the membership a bit more, so it was actually people who were EdTech entrepreneurs or who are school principals, the conversations are richer. What people are able to share with each other is stronger. People are telling us they get more value out of the community. I think what was happening in the former was the conversations were loose. People were finding themselves mentoring other people and not getting much value out of the community themselves, and they just weren't as engaged. So I think there's something really important about the curation of these global communities. Our third lesson is start community building as soon as possible. When we started this work, we would kind of let the 2-year program happen. People are focusing on that, and we'll tell them at the end, oh, you're part of this global alumni network, you should get involved. But by that point, you've lost them. So what we found was actually when we were talking about the opportunities of the global network and the global communities from day one, or even from the recruitment, when people are being recruited into the 2-year program and exposing them to all the things that are available to them once they're alumni, they're much more engaged. So we're able to paint a picture of what it's about and prime them and get them ready early, rather than waiting to the end. Lesson 4, and I think everyone here is kind of probably, feels the same way about this one, but we invested in a team. So as we all know as community builders, this work is really, really hard, and it's not glamorous. It's behind the scenes. There's a lot of coordinating, a lot of connecting, a lot of enabling, a lot of empowering, and communities just don't happen on their own. You've got to invest in it. So 4 years ago, we started with a team of 1. That was me. And then Paola joined. Where are you, Paola? And slowly, over the last 4 years, we've grown the team. So now we're a team of 7 that are committed to building these global communities. And we're really lucky. I know that's a very privileged position to be in, to have an organisation that's really invested in this work. But honestly, without having people who are prepared to do the work and skilled at the work, these communities wouldn't exist. They just don't happen on their own. Lesson 5, very relevant for us in the global community building space, is designing with inclusion. So obviously, in our network, you've got people with different languages, living in different time zones, from different cultural backgrounds, different lived experiences, different amounts of resources available. Just the diversity is just absolutely huge. So inclusion means for us, it has to be central to this strategy. Structural things, we've got to organise interpretation, like before, during, after any synchronous experience. We've got to think really carefully about timing of synchronous experiences. There's no point doing it all on Pacific time if we're trying to reach people and our community members live, in Asia Pacific or somewhere else in the world. We've got to think, do people have data? Like, so much of this is virtual, like, can they actually access this? So we're providing different people in our community data packages so that they can actually get involved in these communities. So there's lots of structural things that we need to do, but then there's also the really important cultural stuff. So we spend a lot of time in these global communities developing rules, cultural norms, ways of working, helping people to understand that there are people here with so much rich diversity, but there's so much difference, and we all need to be aware of that and how we show up. So things like being curious, allowing for multiple perspectives, giving the benefit of the doubt, spending time asking questions, creating that space so that everyone's able to fully participate. Really, really, really important. Lesson number 6 might be a bit controversial to people in this room. And this was a hard lesson to learn. We spent a lot of time back in the day creating really beautiful, bespoke, teach-for-all platforms where people had a username and a login, and they could create a profile, and they could send each other private messages, and they could find events, they could post their own event. No one used them. So we just spent all of our time being like, come, remember your login. Log it on the platform. We were creating all the content on the platform. So we made a decision 3 years ago to scrap our own, building our bespoke platforms, just let's get on Facebook. Like, it's not ideal, 100% not perfect, but we're not fighting people to go there. So our global communities live on WhatsApp group, Facebook groups, and email groups, some of them. And we have just made that choice. It is not a perfect solution, but it's what we're doing right now. We just think it's a better use of our time and energy. So yeah, that was a hard lesson to learn. And interestingly, when you go out and you ask alumni, like, what could Teach For All do to help you connect? They'll say, build a platform. And they're like, well, you don't use it though. So that's our choice at the moment. Lesson number 7, create tons of ways for people to engage. Obviously, this requires resources, but I think, we're talking about teachers, we're talking about school principals, we're talking about social entrepreneurs, mega busy people. Like, you've got to find different ways for them to get the value from being part of the global network. So that's some light touch stuff, for example. Make sure there's a place where they can ask a question and they'll get an answer. For people who've got the time, energy, who want to go deeper, we have fellowships that are intensive, year-long fellowships with events and activities and all sorts of things that people can get involved in. And so the idea is that we want people to know that the network's there, the community's there for them when they're ready for it. It's always there. If you just got a question, you'll get an answer. If that's all you can do right now. If you want to engage more deeply, there is the opportunity to do that. So yeah, create lots of ways for people to get involved. Lesson 8, enable members to self-organise. This is huge, and I think we're still learning a lot in this space. But essentially, we all know, community building, exhausting. As a small team of 7, we can't do everything. We're going to have to accept that actually, and we shouldn't also be the ones doing everything. Like, it should be our members driving their own learning. They know what they want to learn. Let's help them drive their learning agenda. Self-organising takes strategy. It takes planning. It doesn't happen on its own. We do have a role to play, and I think it's a real skill as a community builder to know what role you should play. So it's about being able to diagnose, this community's here. They've got energy, they've got an idea, and I need to be their biggest cheerleader. That's my strategy. Be their biggest cheerleader. That's what that community needs to make something happen. This community over here actually might need an incentive. They might need some funding so that they can run with the idea they've got. This community over here, they might need a toolkit about how to run an event, and that might get that idea off the ground. I think it's a real skill as a community builder to be able to diagnose where the energy is, what the idea is, and what does that person or that group of people need to be able to drive the activity. So at Teach for All, each community that we have has a coach, or it's a community manager. We call it coach. I don't know why. But their role is to do that diagnosis. We have some structural things to help self-organising. We do have a fund that communities can apply to run their own activities. We have toolkits we provide to help people organise. We have coaching support to get people, give people feedback and run on their ideas. We also provide translation services, interpretation services. We provide Zoom rooms. It's all there for people to use. But the key thing is knowing when to step out the way and when to let people run with it, which is a skill. Lesson number 9, critical. And so obvious, but often neglected because time is precious and we choose to do other things. But storytelling has just been one of the most powerful ways to drive communities and self-organising in our network, where we've been able to say, hey, policymakers, did you know the social entrepreneurs organised an event in India last year? They're like, what? We can organise our own event? Yeah. And like you plonk that idea over there and then they run with it. Another example would be we recently had some teachers from Lebanon who wanted to go and learn from teachers in Mexico, so they organised the trip. We shared that with our network, and suddenly teachers are organising cross-border exchanges with them. You sort of give them permission, plant the seed. Really important strategy. And lesson number 10, the last one, is making everyone a community builder. So we have a core team of 7 at our organisation, but actually loads more colleagues at Teach for All are using communities as a way to achieve their goals. So I'm going to give an example of my colleague Katie, who's over there, who's our head of education and emergencies. So Katie, I don't want to butcher this too much, but was brought on to support our network partners and individuals on our network who are working with kids in really challenging conflict and refugee situations. So Katie's an expert in this, and her main role is like kind of providing consulting support, but actually she sees a community as being an amazing way to help her achieve her goal by actually letting people who are in those situations connect with each other and learn directly from each other. And so Katie is building communities of teachers who are working in conflict situations and emergency situations to achieve her goal. We have, and that example is happening across the organisation. Like people are adopting, the idea of being a community builder to achieve their goals, which is brilliant. So those are our 10 lessons. I hope they were helpful. The goal, my goal was this, is that I hope these are affirming or interesting, maybe sparked a new idea. Very happy to take any questions, as long as my voice allows. And as I say, Pixie is on the chat, so please connect with her too. So thanks, everyone. Great.
Hey, over here.
Hey, sorry, I'm like,
this was
a lot of lights happening right now.
This was very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. How do you partner with those in EdTech?
Okay, so lots of our alum, when they finish the program, often what happens is when you're a teacher in the classroom, you're exposed to lots of different problems, right? And so what we see is our alumni diagnosing a problem, creating a solution when they're teachers and it working. And then they're like, okay, how can I scale this to reach as many young people as possible, which leads them to go down an entrepreneur pathway. So we have about 100 alumni from across our global network who've started EdTech. So you might know Clever in the US, founded by a Teach for America alum. There's a bunch of them. So it's exclusive in that our network is for alumni of our partner programs who are now EdTech founders. Okay, and then we build relationships with each of those founders and try and understand what are their main needs and how would being connected globally, is there any value in that? So we did that exercise last year, and what we found was the 2 things that people were grappling with was scaling into new markets and seeing Teach for All as a way of learning about new and emerging markets. And the second thing was peer support. So there are people like me who've gone through this experience as being a founder, and we have the shared experience that we both were teachers for at least 2 years, and this is something that I'm going to get some support. So this is an emerging community. So we brought them together virtually a few times. They've done things like provide consultancy protocols for each other. So there might be a particular issue that a founder is grappling with. They'll share it, and then people will provide feedback. The other thing that we've done is through Teach for All, we're able to connect them with people in the ecosystem. So we did a closed conversation with Sal Khan, the guy who set up Khan Academy, which was a really unique opportunity for that group of alumni to connect with someone who's been in the business doing this work for many, many years. And then the third thing that we've done around the new and emerging market strategy is we've created spaces for these alumni entrepreneurs to come together with investors, government officials, and entrepreneurs in different regions in the world to learn about, okay, how does EdTech scale in Africa, in Asia Pacific, in Southeast Asia, in the Americas, and try and get both contacts into those ecosystems, but also a deeper understanding of how it works. Does that make sense? Cool. Happy to chat more about that as well.
Hi, that's loud. I'm Jorge, I'm Chief Community Officer at Revelo, and my question is, you talk about, make everyone a community builder, so I wonder what are the tools that you provide them, in order to allow them to build their own communities?
Yeah, great question. And there's so much behaviour change that goes on with this as well, because as I say, lots of our colleagues are brought on because they're specialists in a particular topic area, and suddenly you're telling them, and you can also be a community builder, completely different skill set. So we have 2 colleagues internally in my team, Pixie's one of them, and someone else called Trisha, who are internal community building specialists, and who run an internal program for people who are using community building strategies. So it involves things like a community club for community managers, so these monthly trainings or spaces for community builders to come together to share problems that they're grappling with, or to learn about how can I drive engagement in my Facebook group, or how can I better track the impact of what's going on in my community. So there's monthly spaces. One-to-one coaching, so both Pixie and Trisha act as internal coaches for these community managers. They're always there to provide support. We have a toolkit, like a community building toolkit that we've made. We got lots of inspiration from the CMX one and the Fever Bee one, which I think were amazing. Toolkit buddies, so we have a buddy program, so coaches internally can opt in to be buddied with another community coach. We call them community coaches, they're community managers, and like they can meet regularly to share like what's going on. So that's I think there's one more thing missing, but calls, buddies, toolkit. There's something I'm missing. If I remember it, I'll come back to you. I think there's 5 things, but I said 4 of them. But anyway, there's like a whole internal program to support people who want to bring community building into their work to be able to do that. Cool.
Any other questions?
Oh! I did. Okay, there's a video. You were there.
I have one more for you.
Yeah.
You mentioned about meeting members where they are,
Yeah.
and eventually moving over to Facebook, which makes total sense.
Yeah.
I'm in EdTech. I work for D2L
Cool.
as an LMS. So we're in the process right now of building our community. We have one. It's real bad. So we're rebuilding it. But one thing that we're finding is that teachers are very often in Facebook. And I don't know if it's because they just don't have another place to virtually kind of congregate, or if it's truly the right space. And sorry, I know it's several questions there. And then have you ever considered plugging Facebook into maybe a community platform? Like, was that ever a consideration?
I could spend all day talking about this. So basically, the decision that we've made is we can't have anything that involves people creating a profile, like that they're not using daily. So our people are using WhatsApp in their daily life, they're using Facebook in their daily life, they're using email in their daily life, so we're just using Twitter. We're actually thinking about like Twitter, I think Twitter's developing like a community building feature we're kind of interested in, but they're on those platforms anyway, we don't have to fight them onto them. I mean, this is our current choice. It might talk to me in 2 years, I might have changed my mind. But we were just finding we're spending so much of our time trying to get people to create profiles, forgetting their password, like just fighting people to get onto our lovely platforms, which were amazing. And it just wasn't a good use of our time. In terms of EdTech, it's actually interesting. Like our EdTech community, it is emerging. It's definitely not, it's got a long way to go, but they're the community that are using email as like their way of connecting with each other, which is kind of like, you wouldn't have thought, but that's just how they want to. That's how they want to connect. Like I thought they'd maybe go for Slack. We'd have a Slack thing, but no. But this is because it's very global. So we've got people from Pakistan in there, people in Nigeria in there, people in America in there, people in Australia in there, and so we're trying to meet people kind of where they're at, taking into account the kind of global aspect to this as well. Was there another part of the question?
If you considered moving whatever Facebook, Twitter, or whatever into a platform so that they didn't have to make an account.
No, we haven't. I don't think. But could we go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the considerations that we have right now is to put our enablement resources as well as community directly into the product, Brightspace, so that, to your point, if they're going to be using Brightspace when they need help, when they need to ask questions, they can just, without necessarily creating an account, just search for all of the resources, potentially connect with appropriate groups within the product, and then just through API kind of connect to the community if they want to. So an account would be auto-provisioned for them. But I don't know, do you think, like, having worked with many teachers, would that feel too intrusive if we said, hey, we will create an account for you, you don't have to do any work?
I don't know. Honestly, don't know. Something to test, I think. Yeah, I think there are a lot of community, like there's Teachers Connect, and that's a big one in the US. There's TES in the UK, where these are bespoke platforms that be designed for teachers so they can share lesson plans and they can connect with each other. And I just, for our network, Teach for All, they haven't worked. That's not to say that they aren't great. I'm sure they are serving a need and providing value, but just for what we're seeing, we're just opting for that strategy that I shared. Yeah.
I have a question about one of your points where you said that you curate your membership, you recruit them carefully. Are you actually barring some? And what does that look like?
Yeah. So it's different for different communities, and there's something we're grappling with right now. So I'm going to use the example of our school principal community, right? So we have this global network of, 88,000 alumni across 60 countries. Out of that 88,000, I think about 2,000 are now school principals somewhere in the world. There are a lot of people in the network who want to be school principals, who are aspiring school principals. At one point, we had like a big school leader community. You can join if you're an aspiring school leader, you can join if you're a head of department, you can join if you're a middle leader, you can join if you're a vice principal, you can join if you're a principal, you can join if you're managing a group of schools, you can join if you're in a district. And the whole thing, there is merit in doing that, but it needs very careful thought. And the big piece of feedback was I want to be with people who are doing something really similar to me, because if I'm the principals were providing advice to the people who wanted to be principals, and they were saying, I'm just spending all of my time mentoring. I actually want to get kind of mentored myself. I want to meet with peers. So a choice we've made this year is to take that community and think, okay, does there need to be a vice principal community, a principal community, a district leaders community, a middle leaders community? And we do that, and there is some exclusion there, but then maybe there's this big home for everyone everyone in this school leader bucket, and maybe there's a bunch of stuff that we do there to connect people across. That's what I meant by that. Does that make sense?
That's a separate Facebook group, that's a separate WhatsApp group, that's a separate email thread.
So that would need to be figured out, yeah.
Okay.
And at the moment, it is separate, yeah. Yeah. It's definitely messy. The whole thing is, that's lesson number 11. Yeah. It's messy as hell, chaotic, very stressful. If you're like clean things, it's not like that, and that's something we've had to come to terms with.
Not human beings, and that's what happens.
Yeah. Cool.
All right. Thank you, Lucy.
Thanks.
One final question. What did you sing last night?
Share with my friend and our other friend. Common room. No, absolutely not. What was it? Believe? Yeah.
Oh, wow.
It was a good one.
Thank you so much. Really interesting. Big round of applause.
Thank you.